Capitola Black Recordings is pleased to present an unabridged recording of The Carved Cupboard by Amy Lefevre.
Chapter 12. Out in California.
A woman will, or won't, depend on't. If she will do it, she will, and there's an end on't.
On the wooden veranda of Walter Dane's ranch in Southern California sat Gwen one evening, enjoying the orange-flame sunset in front of her, and lounging opposite her was Walter, a good-looking young fellow whose usual expression was supreme good humor, but whose brow now was furrowed with anxious thought. "You see, Gwen," he said in a slow, meditative fashion, "it has been very good of you to come out and look me up. I've been longing for a sight of my own flesh and blood for years, and if I was only a sight better off, I'd offer you a home for good."
"That I would not take, with many thanks,"
said Gwen, laughing.
"Now come, ever since I arrived, I have seen you have had something on your mind. So unburden. What is it?"
Walter looked across the great sweep of uncultivated ground outside his ranch to the landmark of another ranch in the distance, a windmill which pumped up the water necessary for use from a great depth below. "You saw the Setons yesterday. What did you think of them?" As he asked the question, he pulled at his heavy mustache rather nervously.
"I thought they were wonderfully nice people for colonials. The girl is a pretty little thing."
"They are not colonials," her brother returned quickly. "At least, not more than I am, for they haven't been in this country as long. Meta only came out a couple years ago. She was educated at home in Brighton."
"Was she?"
Gwen was looking at her brother with keen eyes now. There was silence for a minute. Then Walter said in a very quiet voice, "We have been engaged, she and I, for a 12-month. And the wedding is fixed sometime next month." Another dead silence. Then Gwen said with a little laugh,
"Well, I am surprised. I do not think you were a marrying man. You never gave us a hint of this in your letters home."
"No, for I foresaw a long engagement and thought it might be deemed rash."
"And how do you intend to support a wife?"
"I can manage it now. My ground is improving. The great difficulty in this part of the country is want of water, and I have overcome that. Of course it will be hard work for some time yet, but Meta knows what life will be like, and an aunt in England has lately died and left her a legacy. She does not come to be portionless." Gwen gazed in front of her with compressed lips. She would not show her consternation and discomfiture to her brother, though to herself she was saying,
"I made a mistake in coming out to him."
Aloud, she said,
"Well, I suppose I must congratulate you, and I will not stay out here after your marriage. You will have one of your family at the ceremony, which ought to comfort you."
"You would like her as a sister, will you not?" asked Walter with anxiety in his eyes as he turned and faced his sister.
"Oh, yes. I thought she was a nice little thing. Not much character, I suppose, but you men prefer that style of woman. She struck me as a lady."
"Rather." And with a short little laugh and a sigh of relief at getting through his news, Walter sank into a lounge chair, prepared to give his full confidence to his sister now that the worst was over. But Gwen disappointed him by rising carelessly from her seat.
"I am very tired. Your early hours here make the day interminable. Good night."
She passed into the house humming the air of a song, but once in her room her expression changed.
"He will marry and have a large family, and only just make his farming pay to support them all. He has no ambition, no desire to make his fortune and come back to England. It means a thorough colonial life for always. Oh, what fools men are!"
She paced her room with clenched hands.
"I never dreamt of such a thing. I came out here to shake him up, to make him better himself, and I find he is perfectly content and considers my coming a decided nuisance, though he doesn't like to say so. He can barely afford to live comfortably himself, and yet he meditates a speedy marriage. I should like to postpone it. I suppose if I ask him to let me stay out here for 3 or 4 months and let his marriage wait till after I left him, he might agree. But then, what should I gain by that? I want him to give up this farming, which will never make his fortune. But if he has a wife in view, he will cling to it. How I wish he had heard Mr. Montmorency talk of the certainty of finding fresh gold fields. If only men of push and a certain amount of money could be forthcoming. I will not let my journey out here be all in vain. Walter must be roused and made to do something better with his life than his present existence. I wish Mr. Montmorency would pay us a visit soon. He would advise him for his good. He says this country is teeming with riches under the surface. Only colonists are often content with so little that they do not develop half the resources so close to them. After all, it won't hurt that girl to wait another year longer. She looks a simple, stupid little thing, and if Walter can be got to postpone his marriage, we may be able to do something with him yet.
As Gwen thus cogitated, the scene in the cottage garden and home came before her, when she found Patty Howitt locked out by her irate sister, and her words flashed across her with clear distinctness now.
If I'm kept out here till dark, I'll maintain a promised wife comes before a sister.
A shadow crossed Gwen's determined face at this recollection.
It is not a case of me or the promised wife,
she muttered to herself with a little laugh.
I would willingly go home again at once and leave the young couple to themselves, but it is of their future that I am thinking, and they will thank me in the end for it, I know.
Not a doubt crossed her mind of the wisdom or expediency of trying to upset her brother's plans and purposes. She knew what influence she possessed over him. He was a placid, rather weak nature, true and steadfast in his dealings with others, and quite capable of holding his own as long as he kept in a certain groove. But for a man, he was strangely uncertain and distrustful of himself, and one who always found it easier to take advice than give it. Gwen had a restless night. Her head was full of plans, and when the next morning there was a stir outside the house, and she was told that a strange gentleman and lady had arrived. She was quite enough versed in colonial ways to show no surprise when she went out upon the veranda and greeted Mr. and Mrs. Montmorency. Walter was a capital host, and was generally pleased to see any friends of his sister, and Gwen felt that fortune had indeed favored her, and sent to her aid the very one who could help best at this crisis. Mr. Montmorency inspired most people with confidence, and it was not long before he was deep in discussions of the country with Walter, telling him many valuable facts about agriculture that had come under his own observation, and from that drifting on to talk of the mineral wealth that had as yet hardly been touched. He remembered the gold rush in Northern California, and prophesied the same would take place in the part they were in. Walter listened, but said little, and even when Mr. Montmorency went on to unfold a scheme of his, shortly to be put into project, he showed little interest.
It is very well for men of means to venture on such undertaking. It wants capital, and there are few about here who would risk their hard-earned savings on a speculation which might fail.
Then Gwen, with her clear head and quick brain, took the matter up. Even bright little Mrs. Montmorency could talk well on the subject, and for the next few days little else was mentioned but a certain region a few hundred miles away where Mr. Montmorency intended to begin operations, and where he had already found proof enough of the existence of gold to make it worth his while to start a company and set to work in earnest. The next mail that left for England contained the following letter from Gwen to Agatha.
Dearest Agatha, this is purely a business letter, and a very important one. I have told you all about Walter and his surroundings already, so we'll not go into that again. Mr. Montmorency has been staying with us. He is a clever, able man, very well connected, a nephew of Lord D, and has spent most of his life out here. He is starting a company for working a gold mine in this neighborhood. There is a certain prospect of its being a grand success. I send you a bundle of prospectuses and papers, which I want you to look carefully through. I know how cautious you are where investments are concerned, and, of course, one cannot be too careful. You will see the directors are all wealthy men, and their names well known at home. Show the papers to old Mr. Watkins if you like, and if you're afraid of acting without legal advice. Now I come to the point. Mr. Montmorency has taken a great liking to Walter. He says he is too good to rust in this part as he is doing, and waste the best years of his life in slaving to earn a livelihood, with no prospect of anything better in years to come. And he has asked him to join him in his undertaking and become an active partner in the concern. I won't waste time by going into it all, but it is a grand opportunity for Walter, and he is certain to make his fortune. The one condition is that he must have capital to invest. He is going to sell his farm, but that will not bring in much. What I propose is that we four should invest our capital in this, hand it over to Walter, and then Mr. Montmorency will be able to take him into the concern. We shall not lose, but be gainers by this. Mr. Montmorency can assure us 5% interest from the first, and that is more than we are getting now. There is not the slightest risk or speculation in the matter, and Walter is privileged to have found such a friend in Mr. Montmorency. I have already promised my portion. Talk it over with Clare and Elfie, and show them that it will not only be benefiting themselves, but will be the making of Walter. I must tell you that he is engaged to be married to a very nice girl out here, and she is going to invest a legacy of hers in the same company. Everyone round here had the greatest confidence in Mr. Montmorency. He is still staying with us, and Walter quite enjoys his society. If you want any more information about the company, you can get it by applying at their office in London. I do hope, for Walter's sake, that you will not be long in making up your minds. It seems so wonderfully opportune that I should have come out in the same steamer with the Montmorencys. The mail is going. I must stop. If Walter gets the capital he needs, he will go off with Mr. Montmorency to the center of operations next month, and I shall then return home. I may tell you that he was thinking of getting married shortly, but he and Meta Sutton have wisely settled to postpone it until he has a good income. I believe myself that he will soon be a rich man. If he is, I shall be well repaid for my journey out here. Love to you all. We'll write again soon. Your affectionate sister, Gwen.
Thank you for listening to Capitola Black Recordings. I hope you have enjoyed this unabridged recording of The Carved Cupboard by Amy Lefevre.